give it a try.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, there we go. All right.
I have to do this.
So, so I'd like to say good evening to everyone from beautiful downtown Ohio. And it's great to be with all of you again, to continue our series of classes on the 6 perfections. This is class 5, is that right? Of 6. And what I've been working from has been the book, The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva. This evening, just kind of to do things differently, I'm using Pema Chodron's commentary on Shantideva entitled "No Time to Lose." I do recommend this book to folks who are trying to fathom the depths of the 8th century text of Shantideva. And so I have used it several times to help explicate parts of the practice that I find a little murky. So this evening, if I remember correctly, now guys, you're going to have to help me here. I do believe we talked about patience last time, but do let me know if I am on the right topic. Because if I remember correctly, we did talk about patience last time, but that would mean the next topic would be enthusiasm or diligence, and so I would like to start there, unless I didn't completely cover patience, and you would like to have some more on that.
A little more on patience would be good.
A little more on patience would be good. Okay, very good. Well, in Pema Chodron's book, she talks a lot about how difficult it is to be patient in situations where people are finding fault with us and are giving us difficulty, and so she breaks patience down into 2 chapters. And the first chapter, which I think we talked about the last time, was about being patient with harm. And in this particular chapter, the second one, she talks about specific situations in patience that might be useful. And so what I might actually do is do a little bit of hopping and skipping through chapter 6. Shantideva's chapter 6 covers the topic of patience. And so what I'd like to do is just jump a little bit back and forth at the last part of chapter 6, so we can talk a little bit about that. So and so what he's talking about in the second half is about how people differentiate between praise and blame. You folks may be familiar with the what they call the 8 worldly dharmas, which are the things that our self-fixation grasps onto. And that's pleasure and pain, loss and gain, infamy and fame, and credit and blame. And these 8 things cause us so much trouble because we find ourselves worrying about them constantly. Pleasure, we like. Pain, not so much. Loss, not so much. Gain, yes. Pleasure, pain, loss, gain, infamy, and fame. We'd like to be famous and not infamous. And then credit and blame. And so because we have these poles that we are swinging between, this causes us a lot of difficulty. And so in his book, Shantideva encourages us to have an even mind. Try to have an even mind and understand that as a friend of mine once said to me, hurt people hurt people. So when people are hurting, they often cause hurt to others, and to try our best not to give harm in return. And so Shantideva tries to find ways to help us understand the situation by allowing us to know that not all situations are clear to us. For example, he reminds us in several of his verses that when other people are harming us, it's because we in a previous lifetime caused trouble for them, and they don't even know why they don't like us, but they are coming after us as a karmic creditor, looking for a repayment. And in fact, my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, once said that sometimes Dharma people feel sad because they said, well, ever since I started practicing Dharma, lots of things are happening for me. My karma seems to be ripening. Maybe I need to stop practicing Dharma so that maybe my karma will stop ripening and everything will be fine again. And what he would always say to them would be that we have in our many, many previous lifetimes accumulated a great deal of negative karma. And there are one of two ways that negative karma will be dealt with. One way will be by experiencing the effects, but the other way will be by purifying the karma through our practice, using our practice as a counteraction to the negative karma. And so when we look at some of the things that Shantideva talks about in his book, it makes us think about these things. So here's one of the verses that he talks about. He talks about these 8 worldly dharmas. He says, this will be chapter 6, verse 90. There's more than 100 verses in this chapter on patience. Do you think it's because he knows we need extra help? He says, the rigmarole of praise and fame serves not to increase merit or one's span of life, bestowing neither health nor strength and nothing for the body's ease. So what he's saying is that we love praise and we love fame, and loving those things, we are really attached to having them. But he calls it a rigmarole, which I don't know that rigmarole existed as a word in Shantideva's time, but I love the English word. It talks about something that doesn't make a lot of sense. The rigmarole of it, the tiresomeness of it. And what my teacher told me one time, he said, do you want to know how you burn up positive karma? And we're all like, yes, how do you burn up your positive karma? He said, fame. Fame will do it every time. You burn up your positive karma so quickly if you're famous. So he said, it's much better not to be famous. And if you are famous, it's very important to use your fame to benefit others and to do charity and things that help other people, because otherwise, he said, you're just burning up the positive karma and not creating any positive karma to replace it. So the rigmarole of praise and fame serves not to increase merit or one's lifespan, bestowing neither health nor strength and nothing for the body's ease. If I am, then 91, he says, if I am wise in what is good for me, I will ask what benefit these bring. For if it's entertainment I desire, I might as well resort to alcohol and cards. So, in other words, if we want people to entertain us, and if we want to be famous and loved and beloved, this is not the way to do it. He says, if I want that, I may as well resort to negative things. So here's what Pema Chodron says. Maybe our downfall isn't getting envious or insulted when others get what we feel we deserve. Maybe our weakness is the rigmarole of praise and fame. However, the things that we think will make a significant difference in our lives, fame, praise, status, new house, the partner of our dreams, they don't seem to remove unhappiness for very long. After the immediate gratification, we're usually back where we started. This simple truth rarely penetrates our being. Even with clear-cut evidence to the contrary, we continue relying on possessions, relationships, reputation, or wealth to significantly alter our state of mind. In other words, it's a different kind of substance abuse, but it's a problem for us that we have to recognize. And so he says, Shantideva questions the wisdom of these habitual assumptions and states the obvious. No matter how successful we are at getting what we want, it won't increase our lifespan, long-term contentment, or our merit. Expecting lasting happiness from a shift in outer circumstances will always disappoint us. With his usual wit, Shantideva says, in effect, if the reason for my addiction to praise and fame is a desire for gratification, I might as well give up my monastic vows and start drinking and gambling. It would give me the same fleeting satisfaction. And then Pema comments, I always wonder if the monks in his audience were shocked or amused by Shantideva's sense of humor. It does make you wonder, right? So, so then he talks just a little bit more, and then I'll stop for questions. In verse 92 and 93, he goes for it again. He says, we lose our lives, our wealth we squander, all for reputation's sake. What use are words, and whom will they delight when we are dead and in our grave? Ah, yes, always bringing up impermanence. That's our Shantideva, right? Then he talks about, in number 93, he says, children can't help crying when their sandcastles come crumbling down. Our minds are so like them when praise or reputation start to fail. So, he's really trying to remind us of what's important and what to get excited about and what not to get excited about, because part of patience is recognizing that the fortunes of our life will rise and fall. This is the nature of samsara. Some folks think that their life will just get better and better and better and better, but it's really, life is up and down and up and down and up and down. And part of the reason we need to practice patience is we need to practice patience with the fact that life is up and down, and that we need to have an even-mindedness and a stableness of mind in order to deal with the ups and downs of life. What do you guys think about this? Do you have any thoughts about your own lives or things that you've experienced that you'd like to talk about in terms of this?
Oh, that's right though. How you think everything's always going to get better. I never thought of that. Yeah, never thought of that.
It's up and down.
Yeah, it's up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always think, oh, it'll be better. Like it's gonna, yeah, interesting.
Well, and the other part of it that I think he's getting at is that, we always want more. Oh, like, I have a joke about my father. He passed away a number of years ago, but he had a very cute sense of humor. I would give him a dish of ice cream and he would taste it. And he said, that tastes like more, right? right? So even he, in his wisdom of old age, understood that, it tastes like more. Thanks for that comment. Daniel's got his hand raised.
Yes, I noticed that since I'm retired, I'm starting to do a little more sitting practice in the mornings. I've increased it by about 50%, and I notice how much more even-minded I feel I can be, not every day, but it's just amazing how much less things bother me the more I sit.
The last thing.
And
The last.
so basically what you're saying is, in meditation, what I think happens to us is that, I don't know, you tell me what you think about this, but what I've noticed is in sitting meditation, our practice is to let go of every thought, every feeling, every emotion, every little story. We let go of all of them. We don't say, oh, I like this story, I'll keep this one. We let go of all of them and return to the breath again and again and again. So we end up not feeding the narrative. We're not, we automatically don't feed the narrative, so that then when things happen, we don't necessarily leap into a narrative like, oh, that's a tragedy, or oh, that's wonderful. There is a little more even-mindedness because we let go of all of the stories.
Yeah, and what's happening too is that when I'm sitting there observing my thoughts, some that are bad or anger or whatever, I'm sitting thinking I'm content. So even when those bad thoughts arise, I'm like, oh, well, I'm content. This doesn't need to bother me. So then that's helping me a little bit off the cushion. Then things come up, but I'm like, oh, well, I'm content.
Yeah, like I have what I need.
Yeah.
This is really interesting that you would say this, because I remember Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche would talk about this sometimes. He would say, in Buddhism, we talk about non-attachment. He said, but people come to me and they say, how can I practice non-attachment? I have all these responsibilities. I have a family, I have a job, and so forth. And you know what he said to them? He said, well, you don't have to get rid of your responsibilities. You don't have to, get rid of your job or your family, or your responsibilities. He said, maybe how you begin is to practice contentment, to be happy with what you have and to feel gratitude for what you haven't. And I think that's really an interesting path, because what I hear people tell me, especially people who are working on recovery, they talk a lot about cultivating an attitude of gratitude. And I think that cultivating that attitude of gratitude is something, a little bit of the same thing that you're talking about. It feels similar.
Yeah.
It feels similar because, contentment will mean different things to different people, but gratitude is easy to feel. Like I went into my house and it was cold outside, but it was warm inside. So I had this like, whew, it's nice in here, and then I said, well, then may all beings have this kind of goodness. May they have this kind of comfort. Yeah. Other people have things they'd like to say about that.
I kind of had a feeling when you were talking that, and it's very similar to what you've just expressed and Daniel said. I don't see, as Dharma practice continues, what I do see is that things do get better, and they're constantly getting better and better and better, even in vicissitude. Now, I think the saddest thing most recently, of course, has been what's happening in Ukraine.
Right.
And that has caused me tremendous pain.
Mhm.
But and that's a whole nother issue for compassion and patience, et cetera. But on a personal level, the downside of things don't seem to matter much anymore. I mean, it's just it's a different perspective. So my question to you is,
Mhm.
can't things just, or is it wrong to think that things are just always getting better because of Dharma practice, and once again cultivating gratitude
Mhm.
and just and joy and love and and just keep
Mhm.
it. Just the more one does that, the happier the environment becomes and people. And
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't get me wrong. But I think you all
Yes.
understand what I'm saying.
Well, it's really interesting that you should bring this up because someone, this was years ago, so this is not in the last 7 days, 7 to 12 days, but someone interviewed His Holiness the Dalai Lama one time and said, the world is just getting worse and worse. And he said, not really. and he said people want to be good. And he said, that's what I see. I see people wanting to be good and wanting to take care of each other. And I see some people working hard to take care of others. And he said, he says, I do think that some things in the world generally are getting better. There's less disease. This was before the pandemic and all of that, but he was just basically saying the situation is getting a little bit better. But I also understand that even when things are difficult, when we do Dharma practice and we find ways to practice the Bodhisattva motivation, just the simple wish that others be happy and be free from suffering, there's Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said there's like a momentum of goodness that starts inside of us when we start wishing for the benefit of others. And he said, I know, he says, it's just a wish. He said, but when you start thinking like that, then he said, there's a momentum of goodness that starts in you. And eventually, he says, it does become self-sustaining. And I think that this feeling about things getting better and feeling more patient and so forth and so on, I think it comes from this fostering of a feeling of wishing for the benefit of others and doing practices like Tonglen, where you are breathing out and imagining that you're giving goodness to others and breathing in and removing their suffering. That for some people, this can help them feel a little more at peace or in a little more inner equilibrium, if that's a thing. I don't know, but I appreciate you sharing that because I've talked to several people. In a Great Path of Awakening, which I always keep at the ready in case I need it. There's a section in point 5 where they talk about how do you judge how your practice is going, and one of the things they say is that when you can rely on when you can deal with what's coming up for you, when you can deal with negative things coming up and use the practice of Lojong to practice with the things that are negative that come up. He said that builds confidence in you that you can deal with and handle the things that come up. And so he says, if you can deal with what comes up suddenly, and you have, he said, this will give you a joyful state of mind. which I thought was a very interesting comment. I think the slogan was always rely on a joyful frame of mind. But what that means is it's not that you should pretend to be happy all the time. It's that you should work with the negative things that come up for you and work with them and try to take on the negativity of others when you do that. And when you practice exchanging oneself for other, which Shantideva talks about at length, about the idea of exchanging oneself for others. And so I don't know if I went anywhere with that comment, but that's kind of my thinking when I hear what you're saying about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no. Does anybody else have any comments? Kind of like, has patience been hard for you lately? Patience been a challenge for you lately?
Yes, I think I find it's almost like I'm preparing myself for it. I wake up, I open my altar, I do my prostrations, I open my altar, I sit.
Yeah.
And then when I'm getting up and I'm leaving my meditation room, it's almost like I take this breath. I want to like just breathe in the moments that I just had to carry it with me, because I know when I'm walking out this door, I'm getting started for my work day, and it's just chaos lately at work. So it's maybe hearing how everybody carries this patience with them through the day. Maybe I need to reframe this for myself. This is very good for me to hear. What I'm doing is literally going, taking this breath of, I don't know, like last moment breath of the peace that I just had, and wanting to go with me, but at the same time have a lot of, anxiety. Well, I guess I'm also anxiety ridden normally, but that sort of thing. That's what's been a little hard for me.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I do think that right now it's been tough. It's been tough with watching the news and seeing all the cruelty that people are causing to one another. It does make us feel discouraged, and I know that can be a little deflating for us. Here we are doing Dharma, and we're trying to get through the day, and all these big things are happening that are beyond us. So I can understand that, definitely.
It feels a little powerless.
I understand, and it has been ever thus. I think it has been. There have always been cruel and mean people throughout history, and apparently there's just been a lot of it, and we're reaping some of the karmic complexities of rejoicing in the deaths of others and things like this, where we feel threatened. I remember Khenpo Rinpoche said, when you hear about enemies killed in a war, he said, be careful, because he said, when you rejoice in the death of another person, it harms your life. And he said, yes, it's normal to feel relief when bad people die, so because they can't harm anybody anymore. He says it's natural to feel that relief. But he said, on the other hand, just try to remember not to rejoice and to say, haha, and to feel satisfaction that they're dead. Because he said this actually causes trouble for us. So I can see the difference between feeling relief when someone who is threatening dies, as opposed to, I can see that, as opposed to sort of being joyful about it.
I wanted to say something about that. I reached out to Sunma when this happened. When Osama bin Laden was found and killed, there was the dancing in the streets and the partying and this and that. And I didn't feel I didn't feel comfortable with that. I wanted to sit and reflect on all the people that died. And I tried to have compassion I still have trouble having compassion for the bad guy. I'll admit it. It's hard. I know the fake it till you make it and all that. But I was really upset and bothered and distraught over how there was all that dancing in the street. And It just didn't sit with me. And to this day, and Sunma gave me some great, I still have what she emailed me. It was beautiful and it helped. I'll forward it to you if I find
I'll
it.
do.
She really did help me because that was hard for me to get through, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing about that. Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
go ahead,
Barbara. Yes, Barbara.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to say to Wendy that I didn't always sit before I went to work. Of course, now I'm retired and I was an RN, but I considered my work, my practice, because it was always difficult to take care of people who were very sick. And of course, sometimes they were recovering and often they weren't recovering. And that was difficult before COVID. I can't imagine what all the healthcare workers are going through since COVID, because I retired before that. But I always did consider my work, my practice also. And when I would be stressed or stressed by not just the patients, but also the coworkers. I mean, that's another whole, it's like politics. It's unbelievable. So it was difficult. So I always tried to remind myself that this is my practice. So I hope that helps Wendy. And also I agree with her about when people like Osama bin Laden murdered, that was horrible. I think, I don't remember who told me, someone told me to consider those people when they were newborns and they were innocent babies and everyone would love them. So all the bad guys were once little babies that everyone would love.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
That helps. Yes. Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah. I really appreciate what you've said about this, Barbara, because I think that we have to find whatever way we can to soften our hearts rather than harden them. And what I really appreciate about what you've said is that patience, it reminds me of something that one of my favorite nuns, Lama Lama, who is now the president of KTD Monastery, she said once, she said, patience is not putting up with something. Patience is being open to how other people are. And that just really meant a lot to me, because it's like the statement about even the worst person was a beloved child at some point in their life. They were somebody's baby. And also the other thing that brings about a feeling of tenderness is realizing those of us who understand karma understand what's going to happen in their future lives, and how much that hurts to think about, you know. And this hit me really hard when I think about like the children who were turned into killers in conflicts around the world, but also the school shooters who were turned into monsters, basically, by the things they fed themselves, and how tragic, utterly and absolutely tragic that is. And by thinking like that, it really softened my heart. Now, this doesn't mean that Buddhists don't put people in jail. This is not, but we have to remember that we are the caretakers of our own equilibrium. We are the caretakers of our own hearts and minds. And it's like when we first realize we have Buddha nature, it's like somebody handed us a baby and we say, oh my gosh, I have to make sure this baby, I raise this baby properly. And that for that reason, we need to take care of our hearts and minds. And and understanding patience in this broader sense of just recognizing that sometimes we're the person who's causing the trouble, and sometimes, right, and sometimes, you know, other people have to be patient with us, and so on and so forth. But anyway, Barbara, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I have a friend who has just she's I think she's in her 50s now, and she has just retired from emergency room nursing and trauma center nursing, and she's a little bit overwhelmed. She's quite shell-shocked. The last 2 years have been more than she could handle. And so let's hold a prayer for her in our hearts, because she's going to start hospice care nursing, just to have something different to do, just to be in a different environment. And I'm thinking about her. She's a Dharma person, and I hope she does well. So you can spare a prayer for her. I've really enjoyed answering and talking with you about patience. I know we didn't really get through the chapter, but you know, I think that that's sometimes not all it's cracked up to be. You know, there's more here, you know. There's more here for that. Should I go on, or should we discuss more? What do you think?
Continue.
Okay, you got it.
What-
Go ahead, Bruce. Did you have something you want to share?
Well, since you asked,
Sir.
Does anyone ever think that sometimes there's a theme to the karma they're experiencing? Because I've had this thing going on for like 2 years where things start auspiciously and then they just sort of crash. Like, I need a plumber to work in Ontario, and it's really hard to find subcontractors. And so I found a subcontractor, and, you know, it's an experienced guy. He's been around for 30 years, and we worked out a price and everything's good. And then he just kind of disappears. And the same thing had happened also coincidentally with a plumber in Torrance. You know, I need to have you replace this water heater. You said it's leaking. Okay, so 2 weeks had gone by, and I try and get in touch with you and call you, text you, and you said, okay, we'll look at the water heater, and then nothing. And this is a theme where things kind of start out and then they fall over pretty quickly after an apparently auspicious start. And I would say, well, it's just karma. Karma tends to be kind of randomish, but it just seems to happen so regularly, and it's been going on for so long. And so as we know, you know, there's 2 ways to get rid of negative karma. I'm apparently burning through this, and so I should be happy. I should be patient with it, and I try to be. So, anyway, since you asked.
I have actually also noticed themes appearing from time to time in the things that I'm experiencing. And it's one of the things I find myself saying is, this is just like a bad dream, right? Because in a bad dream, like, everything you do turns to dust, you know? And in the mind training literature, the bodhicitta literature, you can dedicate these themes to overcoming difficulty for all beings. So you can say, well, here's another thing that's turned to dust. May I and all beings be free from this feeling.
Mm,
and may we become Buddhas, which is the complete freedom from this feeling. It doesn't make the feeling go away,
no.
but it aims your heart and mind toward
Mhm.
thinking, well, it's not just me who's suffering. All of these other beings are suffering too. And so the idea is, wow, this really hurts to see these things fall apart. It really hurts to see this. May I and may all beings be free of this, and may we all become Buddhas in the future. Because at least in that way, you're building something rather than just watching something crumble. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and then it focuses, I think, a bit on the beneficial aspect of having it burnt through the karma.
If you can, I know it's not easy, but if you can, I told you the story about the man who had the burned hands. Did I tell you this story?
No, not
Okay.
familiar.
Okay. We all got raised by different families. Okay. Okay. So here in this country, we don't suffer the physical problems that a lot of people do elsewhere. And we don't have the parents that they have. So when Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche passed away, a team of former monks was brought from New York City to upstate New York to assist in his cremation. And it was done with a funeral pyre that was set in a container that was shaped like a stupa. And the fire had to be adjusted from time to time. And these monastics had done many, many of these cremations in their lives as monks. And so, but they didn't have the proper equipment. And one of them grabbed the handle of a rake that was being used to adjust the fire, and his hands were burned. I didn't know about this until after it had happened. I did not see it happen, but I saw him later in the dining room, and he had just come back from the emergency room where he had been bandaged. I didn't see his hands. I just saw that he looked exhausted. And I didn't know anything that had happened. I didn't know that this had happened. And I said, oh my goodness, you look so tired. You look really tired. And he put his hands up, bandaged, and he said, this karma is gone now. The karma is gone now. It's over. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what an amazing, I could never do that, right? I thought that to myself, oh my gosh, I could never do that. But when he did that, he was completely and utterly sincere to the depths of his being. It might have been the shock still impacting him, but I could hear his parents saying this to him. You know what I'm saying? It's like I almost feel like his upbringing was showing in that moment, and what his deeply held belief was, and how hard that is for us, that we tend not to see that. I'm not saying that anybody should see it that way, but I'm really, sorry to hear about the misfortune that you're having. But there is a couple of things that I recommend. This is just to try this. Okay. The method that I just described, working with the moment of seeing things crumble, and thinking, this is samsara. This is really samsara, and may none of us suffer from this in the future, now or in the future. I mean, nobody suffer like this, because this way we make the aspiration in the future, may this never happen to anyone. Because, it can happen, right? So that's the first thing. But the second thing is, there are some things that I think that's useful. because you're in the business of building, it's important that that you talk with all of your local beings who live in your neighborhoods where you do your work. And I would recommend every day lighting some incense in a safe place, so it doesn't cause, because red flag warnings are real. But
Yes.
Huh?
Oh, I live in a high fire area. I can tell you about it in detail.
Okay, very good. Well, then you have to do it in a completely protected container. But I would burn a little incense every day. The other way you could do it would be to put it next to an open window, burn the incense indoors, but put the smoke next to an open window so it goes out. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because there was a Lama who came to live at KTD Monastery. And he made lots and lots of these offerings. And they would be big ones, big bonfires. And I asked him, well, this is very interesting. I've never seen anyone do this many of this kind of offering. And he said, I'm new here. And I feel like I want to make friends with all of the spirits that live in this area. And, and I'm making gifts to all of them to let them know that I'm here to help and I'm here to be part of the community. And I must also say that, that whenever something is taken away, local spirits get a little bit upset. They actually, Kemper says they've lived so long, they don't know they're not immortal. And they just lived for so long. They feel like they created this world and that they are the landlords of this property. And we are making trouble for them by taking things away. We knocked down that house and we didn't ask their permission. We took that chimney off, or we put this thing here, or we took this tree down. We didn't ask. And so it might be very useful just to every day make an offering at your own home. Again, indoors, if that's the safest, and just crack the window open so the smoke goes outside. And then you say, may this smoke from this incense be whatever it needs to be for these beings. May all of you may it be an offering for the Buddhas, right? May it be an offering for the Buddhas. May it be an offering for the Dharma protectors, right? May it become an offering of compassion for beings in the 6 realms, right? For all of the beings, all the spirits and so on, right? And may it also be a repayment for all my karmic creditors. So these are 4 intentions: offerings to the Buddhas who are enlightened, offerings to the Dharma protectors who take care of us, compassion. It's like an offering of compassion for all beings who are suffering. May it be whatever they need. If they need food and drink, may it be food and drink. If it's a house, give them a house. This incense, may it be whatever beings need. May it be relief from their suffering. And then finally, for those to whom we owe karmic debts, may this be repayment. And then you dedicate the merit. You start with a refuge prayer, then you make the incense offering. Then after that, you can think of those 4 groups of guests: Buddhas, Dharma protectors, beings of the 6 realms, and karmic creditors. And this is a traditional offering that is done every single day at a Buddhist monastery in Tibet. Every single day this offering is made in the morning. You can make it at night, doesn't matter. But I'm just saying that they do it with regularity for this reason, so that they are a positive force in their community. So I know it might be something we're not used to thinking about.
No,
We
it sounds like a great idea. And I've often thought that I should be making some sort of offerings to the local deities where I live. So
Yes.
it's a good idea. Could you repeat the phrase that the monk said
Kathy,
when his hands were
may I
burned?
interrupt quickly? May I forward your great written detailed instruction from that to Bruce, because you have it, Lama Kathy
Yes.
wrote it down very nicely, so I can forward it to you exactly. It's a little formula you can read out. That way you don't have to write it down now if you want, Bruce.
Yeah, very
That would be
good.
really helpful.
Yes, and send it to anybody who wants it.
Yeah, anyone who wants it.
It
Yeah.
came from Rinpoche. It came from Rinpoche. It came from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. And he was teaching, he taught it as part of a series of classes on Great Path. Because there's a practice in Great Path that talks about this. And he said, oh, I've got an easy way to do this just with a stick of incense. He said, I said, easy, I'm awake for that. I want to hear that, you know? Oh, good. Yeah, we've got a few email addresses appearing here. That's good. That's good. And you can send it to folks, because when the pandemic started, people were really worried. They said, well, how can we impact the spirits, and how can we help? And that was the first thing that occurred to me. And it helped a lot of people feel like they were doing something. And I have to tell you, builders do have a lot of karmic debt. Builders do, because we take stuff away. People who build take things away, and the local spirits, they don't understand that this is your job. And what Rinpoche said is, you can say, here, have this, I'm giving you treasure, right? I'm taking these things, but here's treasure. Here, it's for you. You can have it. And you can just imagine that the whole of space is filled with treasure.
Good
and
idea.
Rinpoche said, when you're taking down trees and you're taking down houses and you're taking stuff down, always give them something back. Just like the Native Americans, they believe, the Native Americans were always,
I want to add something.
Yeah.
I have a Dharma friend who lives on the East Coast, and he wanted to build a swimming pool, and he brought in a construction crew, and they took a bulldozer and dug up his whole backyard. One of the construction workers fell and broke his arm. And that construction worker sued my friend, and my friend realized he didn't do a smoke offering, and he did a really elaborate one, and the guy dropped the lawsuit.
No, seriously.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Woo! That gives me the chills there.
Okay. Yeah. But one quick question: could you repeat the phrase that the monk said when he showed you?
Oh, he said he said this karma is gone now. It's over. This karma is gone now. It's over. And this was something actually that Khenpo Rinpoche said to me also. He said, one of the things you can think when misfortune comes, when misfortune comes, he gave a teaching called the 5 benefits of misfortune. I know, right? And yeah, I know. And 2 of them had to do with karma, 2 of them had to do with compassion, and 1 of them had to do with humility. He said, when misfortune comes to you, it makes you humble because you have to ask for help. And that's good for you. Second, the karma that you have accumulated that caused this to happen is now over. It's finished. You can rejoice in that. Third, now that you have experienced karma, you know that you're not going to accumulate any more bad karma, okay? And the idea is, now that you understand karma, you will do your best not to accumulate more bad karma. Then the 2 that have to do with compassion. Number 1, now that you have experienced misfortune, you know to be compassionate to others. You know, you can feel the pain of other people where you couldn't before. And lastly, you can practice with Tonglen, doing Tonglen practice for the misfortune. So it's really hard to believe this and hard to practice this, but I'm so glad we talked about this tonight. I guess we were supposed to talk about a different kind of patience tonight, right? I'm really glad you brought this up, Bruce. I'm really glad.
Well, everything you said, I find to be very valuable. So I'm very grateful for this.
Yeah, I'm so happy because because it lightens our load a little bit to remember that we are part of a bigger world and that we can actually impact that bigger world in a positive way. Even little us in red flag territory, we can put one little bit of wisp of smoke out through our cracked window, cracked open window, just, and try to benefit the world that way. Another way you could do it would be to if you actually, very few people have fireplaces, I think, in California, but those who do, you could even put it through your fireplace and have it go up that way. Whatever is safe, do it the safest way.
Oh, very good.
Well, believe it or not, I think I have to stop now because it's after, after 10:30 my time.
Can I just ask a quick thing? Are the spirits the Nagas?
There are many kinds of spirits. I will tell you, there are so many that you just can't count them. I met a woman in 2020. God love this poor woman. She came from Estonia. Okay, she was an ethnic Tibetan who was living in Estonia. I don't understand this, so I don't know. Anyhow, she's a scholar and she came to Ohio State University in Columbus for a semester as a visiting scholar in March of 2020, just in time for the pandemic.
Wow.
Poor woman, right? But you know what her PhD dissertation is? It's about all of the spirits.
Wow.
She names them, she talks about them, she explains what they do and what they are and how you work with them. And it's like, I want to read this book. I cannot wait I've been waiting for this book ever since Harry Potter came out with the bestiary, right? Where they talk about all the fantastic beasts and where to find them.
Wow.
I have wanted the Tibetan version of that. So, but there are so many, I don't even know how many. But in one of the teachings about these offerings, Rinpoche gave quite a good list. Some of them are Nagas, some of them are Pretas, actually. Some of them are demigods. Some of them are powerful members of other classes of beings. Anyway. Situ Rinpoche was once asked, Rinpoche, what are evil spirits? And his answer was fascinating. He said, they are powerful members of any one of the 6 classes of beings. Okay, remember, hell beings, pretas, animals, humans, demigods, and gods. Okay, they are powerful members of any one of the 6 classes of beings whose activity is mainly malevolent.
Wow.
So, so we got to pray. We got to pray and make offerings and do whatever we can to do our part.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Please let us know when this dissertation comes out. I'm very interested.
I know.
Sounds really exciting.
I've been meaning to send her a text message or something and say, hi, how are you? Remember me from 2 years ago? Did you finish your dissertation?
That would be great.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Yes.
How to win friends and influence spirits.
Perfect.
That could be a thing. That could be a thing. Well, I'm so sorry to have to leave this tonight, but I feel like it's been good to be with you tonight. And especially with all the things going on in the world, it's just good to be with people tonight. And I thank you for this. And we'll just keep praying and doing what we can to benefit others and to repay our karmic debts and so on. And next time I will talk about enthusiasm. Because it's what gets us on our cushion when we're just not quite with it, right? Because there are times when we just don't feel like practicing. So that's what we'll talk about next time, about how to practice. So, thanks to everyone for the comments in the chat. I'm so sorry I didn't see, so thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Let's gather together our merit and virtue and dedicate it to all beings. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Thank you, guys.